these cities first or at all is not mentioned in the Bible. One could speculate the possibility of the giants offering protection from King Chedorlaomer to the cities of the plain surrounding the Dead Sea. This may have been the reason they rebelled. Whatever the reason for the rebellion, we found out that these giants are not undefeatable. King Chedorlaomer conquers their cities and turns his attention to the 5 cities of the plain and spoils them, taking goods and people. Abraham would hear that his nephew Lot was taken. He then gathered 318 of his trained servants. They tracked down King Chedorlaomer's army, attacked them at night, defeated them, rescued Lot, and returned to the cities of the plain the goods and people taken from them. We can determine from biblical scriptures that by the time of Abraham, the giants were spread throughout Canaan in at least 6 different clan groups. All were descended from a giant called Rapha, hence the origin of the original name, the Raphites. As groups of them would migrate around Canaan, they would be called different names by the peoples around them. The 6 giant clans were the Emites, the Zamzumites, the Raphites of Bashan, the Raphites of North Canaan, the Avites, and the Anakites of Hebron. The Emites lived in what is today the country of Jordan, in the area east of the Dead Sea, on the high plateaus. In later biblical times it would be known as the land of Moab. Moab was the son of Lot, Abraham's nephew. Before the Moabites settled the area, the land was populated by giants. The Moabites called these giants Emites, which translates the terrible ones. Deuteronomy 2, verses 10 to 11 describe them as a people strong and numerous and as tall as the Anakites. Moses, talking to the children of Israel before entering the Promised Land, reminded them that God gave the land to the descendants of Lot and had defeated the giants on their behalf. Lot's descendants from his younger son, Ben-Ami, had also driven out giants to claim the land that would be their inheritance. They settled in the area north of Moab and south of the Jabbok River, in what is today Amman, Jordan. The Amorites called these giants the Zamzumites, which means powerful, vigorous. This area was also called the land of the giants. Many of the areas inhabited by these clans would still be referred to as the land of the giants many years after their removal from these areas. The Raphites of Bashan lived in the area today known as the Golan Heights. Bashan means the light soil, and was known at one time for its great forests of oak trees, lush green grass, and herds of fat cattle. The Raphites of Bashan lived in fortified cities with high walls, gates, and bars, as well as many unwalled villages. The capital city was Astaroth-Karnaim, which was attacked by the king of Elam in Abraham's time. The presence of giants in this area would diminish over time. The Amorites took control of the land by the time of Israel's conquest of Canaan. Only King Og was left of the remnant of giants. The Amorites had made Og their king. The name Og means gigantic. Deuteronomy chapter 3, and in the book of Numbers, details the Israelites' encounter with Og. Og had mobilized his armies against Israel, near the city of Edrei. The Israelites conquered Og's army and slayed all those who lived in the kingdom, and took possession of the livestock. They also found Og's bed, which was made of iron, and measured 13 feet long by 6 feet wide. The bed would later reside in the Ammonite city of Rabbah, on display. Jewish traditions about King Og say that he was alive during the time of Noah. The Midrash, a collection of Jewish commentaries on their religious documents, gives 2 accounts about Og. Both state that he was aboard Noah's Ark during the flood. One says he had his own compartment. The other states he rode atop the ark during the deluge. These stories were written to explain the renewed presence of giants on the earth after the flood. These stories further state that Og married Noah's daughters and begat more giants. These accounts are not likely to be true. They are not canon, and on some levels contradict the biblical record. If anyone else besides the 8 people on the ark were there, it's likely the Bible would have mentioned that. Also, if the flood came, in part because of the influence of the giants upon the earth, it is not easy to believe that Noah would save one of them and allow them to repopulate. The first century Jewish historian Josephus gave a description of Og. Now Og had very few equals, either in largeness of his body or handsomeness of his appearance. He was also a man of great activity in the use of his hands, so that his actions were not unequal to the vast largeness and handsome appearance of his body, and men could easily guess at his strength and magnitude. When they took his bed at Rabbah, the royal city of the Amorites, its structure was of iron, its breadth 4 cubits and its length double, which made the bed as long as 13 feet by 6 feet wide, but some sources suggest that the cubits used were from Og himself, possibly making it much larger. Considering a cubit is measured from the tip of our fingers to the end of the elbow, the first Amorite king Moses and the children of Israel faced was Sihon. In some rabbinical sources, he was said to be the brother of Og, and a possible giant. The Amorite people themselves were tall. Archaeological evidence bears this out, but they were not necessarily as tall as the Rephaim, although the book of Amos compares their height to that of the cedars. Possibly as the Amorites displaced the giants, they may have interbred with them, creating a tall group of people, but as a whole not attaining the maximum heights of the original Rephites. In any case, it is very likely the giants themselves would have taken women and produced children the whole time that they existed in the Middle East, which would go a long way in explaining the reason for Yahweh telling the children of Israel to kill off whole groups of peoples in the Promised Land, possibly to destroy the giants' genetic influences. Not that God needs to explain his actions or orders, but we know that the Canaanites were a perverse and debauched society. They engaged in ritual prostitution, self-mutilation, human sacrifice, incest, idolatry, and violence. Interestingly enough, Moses did not want to confront Sihon at this time. He sent messengers to him to ask permission to go through his kingdom, stating that the children of Israel would not disturb their crops or drink from their wells, and would travel only on the king's highway. Sihon rejected their request and gathered an army to meet Moses near the city of Jahaz, a small town on the plains of Moab. The battle didn't go well for Sihon. He fell in battle along with his sons, and the Israelis took his cities. The Bashan area holds many interesting archaeological sites that may attest to the presence of giants. The Circle of the Rephaim in the Golan Heights is a circular stone monument made up of 5 concentric rings with a cairn in the middle, topped with a tumulus. A cairn is a heap of stones that functions as a landmark, a monument, or a tombstone. A tumulus is a dome-like swelling or mound. The monument has a diameter of 155 meters, and the total weight of the stones used in its construction weighs in at 37,000 tons. Some single stones weigh up to 20 tons. This site was not discovered and fully excavated until after the 1967 Six-Day War, when Israel took back the territory from the Syrians. The site dates to 3000 BC, which is the same time frame that the Mayans say that their gods came down and gave them their calendar, as well as being the approximate time that the book of Enoch tells of the coming of the 200 fallen angels, who took wives and produced giant offspring in the time of Jared. Jared was the father of Enoch and was one of the longest-lived people mentioned in the Bible. He was born about 480 years after Adam. He fathered Enoch 622 years from Adam. The 200 sons of God probably came down in the time before Enoch was born, between 35 and 3400 BC. The starting point for the Mayan calendar is August 13th, 3114 BC. Enoch was 177 years old at this time. This starting point of the calendar may coincide with Enoch pronouncing God's judgment on the sons of God and their Nephilim offspring. The fallen angels were told that they would see their offspring die before they were bound in the earth for 70 generations. The giants began turning on each other, fighting and killing one another, and the last of them would perish in Noah's flood. The fallen angels themselves could not be killed by the flood. They were bound in the earth to prevent them from influencing mankind again, at least for 70 generations. I've often wondered, does the Mayan calendar end on the release date for the 200 fallen angels? This is, of course, speculatory. There is no direct biblical evidence to validate this theory. But if you take the starting date of the calendar, 3114 BC, and add 2012 years, and divide that by 70, you get an average of